Welcome everybody to Ask an Architect. We're here for episode number 5. Today on the show we have Bob Fox from Fox Architects. Want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, who unfortunately we don't have yet, but we're looking, so if you're out there, please contact us. Today's show again, Bob Fox. Bob, could you give us the quick 77-second rundown, who you are and why you matter?
Well, I was very young when I was born. And I grew up, my father was an architect.
Okay.
And he actually worked for Lou Kahn and Mitchell Jurgala. So as a kid, I kind of grew up, running around their offices, busting the copy machines. I'm lucky I have all my digits because I was playing around with bandsaws and belt sanders in the model shop and things like that.
So you grew up in architecture?
I did.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And you've since moved on. Obviously, you went to school at
Temple University.
Temple University outside of Philadelphia.
Well, it was right in the heart. You couldn't graduate from Temple unless you had your car broken into at least 3 times.
Good to know. Good to know. I think that's a selling feature.
No, it's a great school, and we had a great program there. And actually, my father was on the faculty, which was kind of interesting.
And so, from Temple, your first job outside of school was AIAS?
Well, no, actually, I worked as a punk in Ballinger up in Philadelphia. So I was a second-year student when I got my first job. I was in the engineering department. They had me practice my lettering back then because we didn't have computers back then. And
we don't know much about that.
So I started out there and then graduated to the architecture studio.
Okay, cool. So let's kind of jump right into Fox Architects.
Okay.
So I'm sure between school and Fox Architects there was quite a bit of transition, but what made you make the leap into starting your own firm? I imagine at some point you made the mental decision to take that leap. What was it that made you go forward with your own firm?
Nick, what I saw were, I was working with a lot of great, really talented people. And, they were being held back, in some ways. So, it was like, they were given a project, but the environment was such that, they were almost there waiting for instructions or somebody to bless their work and tell them to move on. And
sense of approval.
Yeah, so I almost felt like, the projects, there was a disservice there. And so, for me, I think what inspired me was to say, look, I got to create an environment where I can bring in the talent, give them the tools, the training, give them, other top-notch professionals they can share ideas with, and then cut the chains. Let them go. Have them. Put their energy and their heart and soul into their work. And so I feel like that's really, the foundation of the culture, of our firm. We probably get criticized as much as we get praised for it, but we throw people in the deep end sometimes. And we're hopefully standing there with the lifeline, to rescue them. But we try to create an environment where it's safe to say, hey, I have a question, I need some help, and then we're there to, guide them through the process.
That's fascinating that you mentioned that, because we're 5 episodes in now, and a lot of the conversations have centered around the team and the office culture and the people that are part of a firm, not necessarily the work that's being done on their portfolio or the awards. It's really about, do you match the culture, and does the culture help you succeed and propel you forward? And it sounds like you set your firm up really from that perspective, from the inside out, looking not at necessarily just clients, but how can you build a good, strong firm of staff and employees?
Yeah, I think that's critical. I think, in the design world, we're all very passionate about the work that we do.
Sure.
And I think we all have our own style, of work that we do. And I think that, you get into a firm and sometimes you align with it and sometimes you don't. And I think that, as you're growing up, it's really, you're growing in the profession, I should say. I think it's important to recognize that. And I think it's to find an organization where you can fit in and it's comfortable and you have a team that supports you and a team that's aligned with your values and there's a consistency there. I think, we probably all experience it in school where, you're sitting there and somebody's got this, wacky design thing that they're working on and it's like you just don't get it. But then there's others that, hey, that's cool and you like that. Well, if you can find a firm that has that stuff that you like and you're aligned with, that's where the secret sauce is. And so when you get people there that are sharing their ideas, and working together and collaborating and building on something, you get a much better project, as opposed to a firm where somebody's like tearing down ideas and criticizing people and not really contributing in a consistent manner.
And so you're focusing on the positive and building up rather than tearing down.
Exactly, yeah.
And would you say that's how your firm as a whole distinguishes itself, by bringing a team to the table that is always positive thinking, has the right attitude, and they'll make the design work, whatever that may be, but that the team is the real competitive advantage for you?
Very much so. I think that I always am sort of a little critical of the design profession sometimes because, I like to tell
me more.
that
Tell me more.
We're the largest group of the most insecure people that you've ever met because we're trained through criticism. And
Fair point.
so after you've had enough criticism, you just kind of want to like roll up under your desk and sort
Sure.
of get away from it all. But I think if you can have an environment where that criticism is done in a healthy way, you're going to get a much better product in the end. And I'm also very proud of the fact that our firm just this year won the Best Place to Work award.
Cool.
To me that's kind of it's not that the award is important. What's important is that environment that we have. And so to me, the award is just a recognition of something that we already had in the culture.
So let's piggyback off your team and talk a little bit about how you created the team. So when you're hiring and you're interviewing, what types of things are you looking for? Are you looking more for the personality and the attitude, or are you looking for somebody well-rounded, or is it all about the design at the forefront? What's most important?
Well, I think their work is probably first and foremost. Obviously we're going to get a resume. I think in today, most cases, that resume is digital. We get samples of work along with it. So, the
Sure.
work, again, it's like I go back and I say, if it's aligned and it's consistent with the sort of philosophy that we have about design, then that's somebody that we're going to be interested in.
Okay.
I would say that probably the second most important thing is the ability to communicate well. Because we deal with so much information. I mean, if you think about, a set of drawings and all the stuff that we have to put into that, there's a massive amount of communication that we have to do and coordinate. And so, if somebody's not communicating well or struggling with that, then that's going to be a challenge, for us in terms of how we work.
So how do you evaluate for communication skills in an interview? Is it how the person composes themselves during an answer? Is it their speech? Is it how they explain their projects? How do you best evaluate someone's communication skills?
I would say it's their ability to interact with people, to explain their ideas. I mean, I think we're a creative profession and we have all these ideas and we like to innovate, but our drawing and the pencil is one way to do that. Mm-hmm. The technology today, I think, presents another way to do that. So even if somebody doesn't speak the language, if they have a drawing skill or a technology computer skill that reinforces and clearly explains what they're trying to do, I think that's helpful.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, we're living in a world that speaks predominantly English, and
Sure.
clear communication, I think, is something that's really important. But we have people from all over the world in our office. We have 2 people from China in our office right now, and they don't. I mean, they actually speak English pretty well, but it's not like you have to have 100% grasp of the language. It's more about how you express your ideas.
It's your approach and your expression.
Right.
Got it. What is your favorite interview question, Bob? When you're interviewing people and looking for new staff, do you have a go-to question that you use time and time again that really kind of is either distinguishable for you, or just something that you really feel comfortable or gets to the heart of the matter for you in interviews?
I would say it's almost I'm looking for them for the questions that they're asking me.
Interesting. Okay.
And so it's almost, I'd kind of like to have a sense about, what they're aspiring to, what
Sure.
their vision is for their career, the type of work that they want to do. I think all of that's important. But I think when it boils down to, when somebody's engaged with you and they're asking us about the firm, the type of work that we do, what our culture's like, what our people are like, how they're going to grow within the firm, then I know I've got somebody that's really going to be focused on their work, their career, and they're probably going to do a really good job.
Yep, fair point. Piggybacking even more on communication, you are involved with something called Work Design Magazine, correct?
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's a little bit different than what probably 99% of the rest of the architects out there are working on. They probably don't have that in their portfolio. Tell me a little more.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the genesis of it was back in 2010. We were slow because of the recession, and then Washington, D.C. had the whole sequestration thing. And so I had all these interns that were calling me saying, Bob, I want to work in your firm. And I'm
Sure.
like, we're kind of slow right now. I don't really have anything you can do. And then I felt guilty. I felt bad. I felt like I really ought to be doing something to help these kids. And,
Interesting.
and so I called them back. I said, hey, come on in for dinner. I'll sit down with you and we'll just talk. And so one thing led to another, and I was like, I'm looking at all these bright, eager minds, and I'm like, I got to find something for them to do. And so I was like, research project. And so one thing led to another, and I called up a friend who had helped us with our website, and I'm like, Steph, I got all these really cool things, these research that's been done. I want to do a newsletter or something. And so she looked at it and said, hey, she did some research, and she said there was nothing out there like this in this space.
Okay.
And so she said, you ought to do an online publication.
Okay.
And so I said, look, I don't have a clue what you're talking about, but here's the deal. I'll pay you.
I know, you were just
Get
talking
all this
about
stuff.
pencils and trace and never using a computer 5 minutes ago, yeah.
But anyway, the struggle, I think what motivated me was that in 2010, there were a lot of these new alternative officing concepts that were coming into the profession.
Okay.
Everyone was looking at those concepts through different lenses.
Okay.
And we didn't have a common language with how to speak about that, and I felt like we were confusing our clients. And so there was no place that I could go to in the industry to, speak to my peers, share ideas, and validate these ideas that we were having to say, this one's good, this one's not good. And so Work Design Magazine kind of grew out of that, and I really kind of leveraged the work with the interns to kind of get that idea rolling. And so the magazine now, it's an online publication. It's workdesign.com. We've got about 30,000 people a month that go to the website.
Okay.
60% is US, 40% is international. And so, we've got people literally from all over the world now that we're engaging with. So I feel like, the platform's there.
Yeah.
And, all of my peers are the ones contributing. It's completely separate from the firm. I have a separate staff that puts it together.
Okay, interesting.
And they have the editorial hammer to kick me out of it if I'm not, if I'm trying to influence it the wrong way. So there's a Chinese wall. But anyway, so that's been a lot of fun because it's enabled me to get out, talk to my peers, engage in conversations that I wouldn't ordinarily have the chance to do. And so I think all of my peers have that ability to participate. So the ones that have gotten into it, we've had some great conversations, and I think it's kind of beginning to shape and hopefully build that common language with how we move forward on new workplace ideas.
Do you feel, so it sounds like that the magazine does contribute to the furtherance of your design at your firm, so that what you learn through the magazine or through that research, you can then, in potential situations, apply it to your actual practice.
Oh, sure, very much so. Yeah, and it's not like any of that's kept secret. I mean,
Sure.
People write articles, we put everything out there. So even our latest thinking and greatest ideas, it's all out there on the website.
Yeah, so that's a fascinating element to your story, Bob, because I think it highlights the value of bringing something else to the table other than just your design skills or just your architecture. Here you're kind of pursuing a little bit of a journalism research angle that is then contributes to your practice and builds it and makes it even better than it would be on its own.
Well, I think it's a tool that we can use to, I think test and validate a lot of these ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the challenges is we're always, intuiting new concepts, and so we don't. The industry doesn't have a lot of, I'll say, analytical, hard facts. The information we have about measurements in the workplace, it's changing so rapidly right now.
Sure.
So I think we need to be able to test those ideas as best we can. So Work Design Magazine, I think, has really kind of become the place, the platform with which we can do that.
Yeah, it sounds like it gives new ideas time to grow and evolve and to actually acquire some data about those ideas. Where a lot of times architects are constantly reinventing themselves year over year to try to be at the forefront, but not necessarily looking back and saying, okay, what really works and what's the debrief or post-mortem on this particular concept. Cool. Well, Bob, that's all a fascinating angle to the profession, and I'm really happy to have you on the show because I think it shows something a little bit different than somebody who is just traditional architecture and that's the only thing. I feel like there's many sides to Bob Fox and to Fox Architects.
Well, we're trained as problem solvers, so I think that's the great thing about an architectural education. You're taught how to think and solve problems.
Absolutely. So that's a perfect segue into what we like to call 60 seconds of awesomeness. So, Bob, I'm going to go through 60 seconds of questions with you. Natalie, if you could put 60 seconds on the clock and let us know when we're done.
All right, ready?
Ready to go? You ready, Bob?
Do I get a prize for this?
We'll think about it. We'll send you a Work Design magazine subscription. All right, ready to go? Natalie, go. Architect from history you most admire.
Lucan.
Vinyl records or vinyl windows?
Vinyl records.
New urbanism or old urbanism?
New urbanism.
Art Nouveau or Nouveau Riche?
Art Nouveau.
Jimmy Fallon, Jay Leno, or Johnny Carson?
Jimmy Fallon.
Steel or aluminum?
Aluminum.
Frank Gehry or Gary Busey?
Frank Gehry.
Best architectural entry, the Louvre or the Apple Store in Manhattan?
I'm probably going to go with the Apple Store in Manhattan on that one.
Better time, yesterday or today?
Today's going great so far.
Part T or Part 1?
Probably part 1. I like beginnings.
Architectural Record or Architect Magazine?
Work Design magazine.
Good answer. The Fibonacci sequence or the Golden Ratio?
Golden ratio.
How do you spell Schuylkill River?
Oh my God.
And time.
Sure.
We'll give you a pass on that one.
Saved.
Bob, thanks so much for being on the show. And thanks for all you who are out there watching, and we'll see you next time on Ask an Architect.